Well, welcome everybody. First of all, I want to thank everyone for joining today. It was just a week ago, actually, that we launched our first episode in the Verge Spotlight series in what we were calling unprecedented and difficult times. But it seems this week and today we need stronger words. We want to recognize courage and the appreciation of everyone that's involved in both delivering and attending our virtual events. We don't obviously need a horrific tragedy to remind us that the topics that we're discussing in these events are very much related to the world that we're living in. Everything safety, security, communication during a crisis, people working from somewhere other than quote unquote work are all the current scenarios that we're working on with our partners to try and help us connect with and bring some value to our current and possibly some prospective clients. Kind of a how do we best deal with where the world is going approach. So we're working on just some emerging trends and their impact on the lives and businesses of Atlantic Canadians. My name is Mark Hipper, and I'm with Verge Technologies, and I'm excited for your reaction to what will be shared by Dan Chevery, who is the manager for Eastern Canada for HID Global. So Dan's going to be discussing Credential technology, kind of how it's evolved, and some risks around what many of us consider to be current access control technology, and what we think is current for today and up to date. We will have some time for Q&A. If you have a question, feel free to pop it in the chat, and I'll keep an eye on that. And of course, we'll address some questions at the end, if that makes the most sense. But we do look forward to your questions and your feedback. And we do have another session scheduled this week on Thursday. Dave McIntosh is going to host another session on collaboration and how our clients are partnering the Samsung Flip interactive board and Cisco WebEx. If you haven't yet registered, we do encourage you to do so. Before I'm going to hand the reins over to Dan, I do want to just quickly chat through kind of what got us where we are today as far as Verge Technologies goes. So Verge Technologies was previously the ICS, the technology division of VistaCare Communications. Been in business since 2003, and this change was a management buyout that took place at the start of this year. Continue to serve our clients in the Pro AV and communications cabling and security and life safety, all the fields that we've worked in the past. We've got the same group of folks. We've added a few key members that we're excited about, but it's the same technicians that our clients know well. That our partners know well. It's the same operations team, same management team, same sales team. Well, we're excited for the fresh start, and we're also excited to bring you this spotlight series that we're getting some great feedback on. But that's enough about us. I'd like to relinquish control here and have Dan present what he's going to present. There's some pretty solid information there that I think is going to make you think about how your companies are looking at security and access control. So Dan, I'm going to just stop presenting here, and feel free to add your presentation in.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. Everybody can see that screen. It's okay.
Yep.
Yep. Okay, good. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to the Verge team for having us. So Dan Chevery, based in Halifax, and I manage Eastern Canada for HID Global. So for us, that means Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic. So our role in the industry is we are the hardware component that integrates with access control providers. So we supply the cards and the readers to kind of make it short. And what we're going to talk about today is really just about the Credential technologies, then and now. So without further ado, we'll jump into it. So this is a Credential continuum that we put together, and it shows the evolution of how the Credential for access control has really changed over the last, give or take almost 30 years now. So, when we compare procs, and it's one of the most widely used credential technologies today still. We look at the generation of when that was actually brought forward. And that was, 1990. So if we look at technology in the terms of how it's evolved outside of physical security since 1990, you've got a beautiful Macintosh computer there from early 1990s, just comparatively. And you can see that the generations of access control credentials has significantly changed over time. So, if we move from procs, essentially the patented technology on procs was up, and then that was released to the masses. So at that time, credential technology needed to become a bit more secure. In the early 2000s, I-class technology was introduced. And then not too long after, unfortunately, that was compromised as well. So, this really leads us into our third and fourth generation of credential technologies. And what's different and what's really has changed is the encryption behind the actual credential in itself. So, when we look at technologies like our I-class SE, or we get into fourth generation technologies, what you're seeing is encryption layers put around the credential in itself to protect the information within the physical card. So, we look at the status quo and what are vulnerabilities that could be quite possible with the credentials that are in circulation today. Magstripe, right, that you've been around since the procs timelines. It's pretty easy in this world today to gain access to read-write devices that could then clone the actual credential in itself. So, we have Magstripe cloners. We have handheld procs cloners that you'll see in a second here. I-class cloning, that second generational credential that's now deemed vulnerable. And it's pretty easy for you to get your hands on where and how you can do this. There's websites out there in Canada, such as FOB Toronto or FOB Vancouver. And those websites are local businesses, and it's not against regulation. It's not an illegal form of work. But they'll provide you with cloning for your access control credentials. So you think of condominiums, gyms, parking, work, government institutions. If we're still using this type of technology today, it is very possible and easily accessible to clone that technology. The Kimi kiosk is something that we have not seen in Canada yet, but it is widely used in the US. And if you put in your postal code to the Kimi website, zip code to the Kimi website, it essentially will bring it up like a local coffee shop and show you where these kiosks are. 7-Eleven, Walgreens, CVS pharmacies, and on your lunchtime you can go and copy your credential just like you'd copy a key at Home Depot or Kent. So just a quick little video on the actual procs clone itself. So it's pretty simple. A 30-second video, but this will show you how easy it is to actually clone the procs credential. Well, it's pretty easy, right? Under 15 seconds with an RFID scanner in your pocket. I personally have one here in my office. Cost me about, it was about $20, $30 on eBay, and it came with a bunch of blank key fobs that you could use for cloning. So the focus, on that one is, the vulnerabilities and how easy it is to access those types of cloning technologies. So, why change? Why now? Obviously, we saw in that video, there's risk for card duplication. We're talking about security breach. Access control is now being looked at as a technology or something that is required to be upgraded in the organization. Sometimes we're seeing it as a part of the IT infrastructure. Now we're talking about, smartphone credentials going from a physical card to a credential that's on your smartphone. So, part of the changing, stay current with your access control solutions, and introduce these types of upgrades into your IT department as part of IT budget or functionality. So, using a vulnerable card technology is the same as if you're going to be giving away your username and password, right? So we want to remain secure, be safe, and reduce the risk to our organization for somebody to get in without permissions. So one of the things that is being done with our newest generation of credential technologies is we want to additionally protect the information inside that credential. And the way that we've done that is we've done what's called a secure identity object, or put an SIO around the information stored in the card. So think of it as a white envelope, the white envelope that you would put a letter in and mail it off. What we've done is we're wrapping the information inside of the credential with a unique ID and a signature on that envelope to then protect it within the center of the credential. So if an individual were to attempt to crack the code, let's just say, that essentially this would fall apart and then become, stopped in its tracks at that point. So, this is additional to just the card technology itself. These are protection layers that we are putting on top of the information in the card to ensure its safety. Just to show you how the most current generation of credential technology will work from us. And so within the card in itself, it's protected by that envelope, that SIO. Additionally, we're adding more layers of cryptography or cryptographic encryption over, above, and beyond the SIO, the envelope. So what's important here is that the credential is presented to the readers, and then there are encrypted keys in the reader that are necessary to match the encrypted keys on the credential, and they'll exchange a short period of information. And once that encrypted keys match from the reader to the card, the information that's housed inside the card is released and then decrypted and sent to the panel. So, we're not just sending zeros and ones from the card to the reader and then to the panel. We're going through a few hurdles of encryption and decryption before those zeros and ones are released to the panel. So, this all happens within milliseconds by the time you present the card to the reader. But that will protect you, your organization, from even the ability to clone that credential in the field with a handheld cloner. Other benefits to credential technology today from before is the ability to actually condense the amount of credentials that you would have in your hand into a single card, essentially. So with fourth generation technology, we're able to take credentials that you may need for print services, parking, physical access to other buildings that do not share the same access control system, logical access for workstations, whatever it may be. And we can actually store the different types of credential access requirements in what's called a vault inside of the card in itself. And that's a part of our fourth generation credential technology. So for the organizations that are out there where individuals may walk around with 2 or 3 credentials in their pocket in order to gain access or use certain applications, we are able to actually look at condensing that into one single credential today with the different technology that we have out there and available. And this just shows you the different form factors for credential technologies currently in the marketplace. We have single technology cards. We have dual technology cards as well, where one side is a lower frequency and the other side is a high frequency. So that supports clients during migration processes. So you can get from a vulnerable technology to a more secure credential but not all do it at once, because the most important part beyond this is the reader on the wall, and the reader on the wall being able to actually read the credential that you have in your hand. So we would never be able to use fourth generation credential technology with a first generation reader, from 1990 per se. So it's important that we support the clients with dual technology card functions in order to help during that migration process. You can see that there's key fobs available for credential technologies. And now the most common, and really where a lot of this is going, is to the smartphone. So now we're taking the physical card you had in your hand once upon a time and putting that form factor into the phone itself and leveraging NFC or Bluetooth in the smartphone to send the credential information to the reader and then the reader to the panel. And with an asterisk on that, there is significant amounts of encryption behind the scenes that works in order to protect that transfer of data. So that in itself is another conversation. However, certainly we've taken the steps to ensure that the information transferred is significantly protected. So that's really it as far as the evolution of credential technology from then to now. I appreciate everybody joining. This is just a quick overview, and we'll open it up. Give it back to you, Mark, for any questions.
Terrific. Thank you, Dan. So I know we spoke a little bit about it, but I'd like to hear when the clients that you're working with that are recognizing the need to move to the newer kind of the fourth generation. What do they see as the risks? Recognizing the history and how easy it was in the past. What do they see any new risks with moving to this newer technology, or is there a challenge in them implementing it into their environment?
I would say that they're not seeing risks by going down this path. Typically when we're actually upgrading credential technology from the proximity cards or the legacy ICAS cards, there's a reason for that, right? There was penetration testing done. There was an incident in the business. There's potential card duplication going on where they have overlapping of card serial numbers. So there's a lot of positive that comes out by doing these migrations. One thing also is that, typically from a budgetary perspective, older technology is more expensive than the current technology, the fourth generation. So clients will pay more for a proximity card than they would for a fourth generation credential that was shown there. So the benefits are improved security, reduced risk, but also financial impact is positive as well because their capital output is less than what it would have been for the old readers or old card technology. Challenges from a migration standpoint, if you have 100,000 credentials in circulation, it's going to take time to phase out those credentials. It's also going to take time if you have that high quantity of cards, you probably have a high quantity of readers as well. So, ensuring that you have multi-technology cards as a one scenario where you have one side of the card is the current high frequency, most secure credential. The other side of the card is your legacy prox or I-class. It gives you an ability to close a gap from a transition period perspective where you can still upgrade your readers in phases in the field, but people are walking around with dual tech cards. So when they go to a building that has the old reader, it'll work at that building. When they go to a building that has the new reader from the upgrades, it'll work at that building as well. The reader will decipher which side of the card to actually read. And then on the reader side, part of the projects, again, you have those clients that have high quantity cards will have a lot of readers as well. So working with a reader that's multi-technology. Readers that are current generation that are new today are typically backwards compatible. So they can support all those old prox cards that are in circulation. So, the challenge is time, right? The challenge is time in the sense that it takes time to do these migrations, but now is also the time to start to consider and budget for those migrations because they do take a while. I mean, we work with a lot of projects, I work with a lot of customers in Atlantic Canada, also a lot in the Ontario and the Toronto space. You get a lot of global companies as well, right? So we're not talking about local infrastructure. Now we're looking at infrastructure and badging that is global. So, sending out those cards to other areas globally. And that's where smartphone credentials sometimes come into the conversation, is because where it's web-based, you could be in your office in Halifax or Toronto. And if you're global or have a far reach, you could send out those credentials over the air. So, you reduce printing costs, maintenance on printers, shipping fees, customs duties, time, maintenance. There's a lot of reduction in other capital costs in organizations that are not taken into consideration typically when you think about the cost of a card. The cost of a card today is not just the cost of the physical card you've bought. There's a lot of other costs behind it. So the financial conversation then comes into play there. Yeah.
And as far as the kind of the migration strategy from a hardware perspective, it's the readers. I mean, for the benefit of the folks on the call, organizations don't need to swap out their software. They don't need to swap out the door controllers. It's the reader that this transaction is taking place, and that's the critical point.
Yeah, the reader on the wall that's a great question. The reader on the wall is very important because it's going to read the card that's presented to it. So, having a technology on the wall or a reader on the wall that is multi-technology for an organization who has had credentials in circulation for quite some time is going to be important. The benefit to that multi-technology reader, again, is that it reads current state technologies, but it also reads the old state technologies. So, at a later time, a technician can go to that reader and turn off the proximity in the reader. So, from a security assessment point of view, I've now circulated out all of my prox credentials, and I have, fourth generation credentials in everybody's hands. I no longer have a requirement of keeping the prox on in those readers. I can go back to them with a configuration card, or to be honest, with the new generational readers with a smartphone app, and turn off the prox in those readers later on. So now when I do my security assessments, I've got a secure credential and a reader that only reads a secure credential. So nobody at a later time could come forward to a reader, present the old prox card they had from years ago, and get in. They'll be denied access. They'll only be able to get in with that most current secure card that they have. So from a migration standpoint, there's a lot of strategies behind it. I know, we work quite often. Chris Clark has joined the call here today, and Chris has probably worked on some projects locally and around, with his clients that in similar situations. What is that migration strategy? So, there's definitely ways it can be done, and sometimes it's readers first, sometimes it's dual technology cards first, and it really depends on the customers, but there's lots of options out there to migrate. You don't have to change the access control software in itself. The reader will. It's kind of the Swiss Army knife of readers. The reader will integrate with multiple access control systems that are out there. So it's not a complete overhaul that we're looking at.
Right, and I think that's important to recognize when people are measuring their appetite for this sort of a change. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries.
I would like to open it up. I don't want to monopolize all Dan's times. Are there any other questions out on the call?
Yeah, I'm wondering, Dan, Eric. I'm just wondering maybe so I'm just wondering about like you said, with existing software and having existing cards, and some are generation. I take it that the software access control to allow and remove people from that system still remain the same with fourth generation. That's first.
I'm sorry, Eric. I only got like 10% of that. I think you might have to come closer to the microphone.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Is that better?
Yeah, a little bit better.
A little bit better. Is that better?
That's much better.
That's better. Okay. So The question was in a access control system currently, we have the ability to allow people in and remove it off the software for the access control. You said that this new integration of fourth generation proximity card readers would integrate into most softwares that's out there. My question is, would the fourth generation, I guess it's a couple questions in there, but the first one is would the fourth generation be able to obviously remove and control, how do you control the flow of people when they're allowed and when they're not through the access control system? Is it still the same software that we use? How does that work? Maybe we can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so you'd still remain using the same software. So Eric, just for clarity on the HID side, we are not an access control software provider. We are strictly the OEM for the hardware, so the cards and the readers. So you would essentially replace the readers that you have today with the newest generational reader, but your functionality of allowing or disallowing or putting a timestamp on expiration on the credential in your access control system would remain the same. So that experience and how you manage that is not going to change. What's going to change is getting all those old prox cards out of circulation, so they can't be replicated or in the field. You take out those vulnerabilities, right?
Mm-hmm. So, okay, so that's the first. My next one was basically, do you guys have the ability to integrate to fourth generation fingerprinting? Like, is there anything along that lines where they have a fingerprint scan where you can go up, hit the fingerprint, and then that allows you into certain high security areas, let's say like grow ops or like germination place where we're growing marijuana? Those kind of things where we oversee that as a province. We have a lot of that stuff. Federal regulations have a lot of, around that also, right? Quite a bit. And they play a big part into it also.
Yeah, that's a good question, Eric. So biometrics, and I apologize, actually now that Eric says that, likely something I should have included in the then and now scenario. But yes, Eric, to answer your question, there are biometric technologies available specific to our company. I obviously can't speak to what else is out there, but we do have biometric readers that have a sensor on the reader. And the one of the critical components is that we've stepped away from reading the actual fingerprint in itself on the top layer. We're reading subdermal. So we're reading the information beneath the first layer of skin that has your print on it, because in some instances, physically, there are individuals out there that do not have a fingerprint. So we're reading the liveness. It's called liveness detection, and that's beneath the surface of the actual print in itself. Those types of readers can be integrated to your access control software just like a normal reader would do. The difference is that now we can get into multi-factor authentication. So you can authenticate the finger and the individual that they're an actual living human because of the liveness detection. And then also you can present the card to the reader to validate that. So what would happen is we would actually put a biometric template on the card. That fourth generation card technology has a little computer in the card, and we're layering on the cryptographic technology into that CPU on the card, and we can store a biometric template in that little computer on the card. So when the card is presented to the biometric reader, then you can present your finger and they'll create a match. And if they create a match, it'll then send the information to the access control system to let you in. So biometrics have changed a little bit over time. There's lots of biometrics out there with retina, facial recognition, fingerprint acknowledgement. So this is what we do at HID. So yes, Eric, there are options for sure.
Okay, and I got one more question for you, and then I'll get off. The other one was, if I just remember correctly, with CIO, our Chief Information Officer. They're very, very. They don't like when you talked about global. They don't like having access web-based stuff because we are very protective for our firewalls and stuff. How do we integrate a global solution province-wide to are you guys compatible with CIO? Like how? Like a lot of we have backnet compatibility. We have certain protocols where the CIO will let us through and certain things that won't. How have you guys explored that, and how does that integrate into existing security systems and protocols on web-based servers? Because we had that problem with remote FOBs. Because actually, Dan, you made a really good point, because the school board ECD came to us and said they wanted remote FOBs for the gym because the teachers didn't want to have to walk all the way across the field to allow the students to go to the washroom in the gymnasium area, so they could hit the remote from the field. But we were like, if you lose that FOB, then that's going to be in the community, and now we got a school that's unsecure. So that was a big issue. So we tried to get away from the FOBs, not allowing the teachers to have FOBs, right? I'll let you speak to that.
So when you get into the whole smartphone conversation, I mean, Eric, I can definitely follow up with this about when you talk about cloud and web-based hosting, there's a lot of parameters we've taken there and steps we've taken as an organization where we're actually not storing any information in the cloud. So we've removed a lot of the security breach risks associated with that conversation in itself. From a distance technology perspective, really, there's nothing that we can use. You can't be really like that far away, I'd say, in a field. With smartphone technology now, you can be about 30 feet away from a door with a Bluetooth credential. And I have an Apple Watch next to me, so you can actually have the smartphone credential on your Apple Watch as well. So if your device is in your pocket, you could tap the logo on your Apple Watch or Android Watch. It'll send the signal to the reader and then open up that door. So you can be about 30 feet away, Eric.
I like.
But you can't be 100 feet. We're not there with the technology yet. And to be frank, nobody's there with that technology yet. So.
I really like, Dan, I really like the presentation first thing, but I really like the fact that we may move to a phone-based system where you have the fingerprint technology right on your phone that allows you to get in. That's A, plus we have quite a bit of security protocol around all our BlackBerries, or our iPhones, I should say now. Yeah. And so basically, yeah, with that being said, maybe that's the way to go in the future, hopefully.
Just to add to that comment, Eric, when it comes to the smartphone credential, because the credential is on your phone virtually versus a physical card in your pocket, the steps that we've taken in our web-based software is we actually allow the end user client, so yourself, to enforce an enterprise policy. So what that means is that you can actually restrict all of your smartphone users that they have to unlock their phone in order to use the credential. And we know that unlocking your phone today either is defined by a fingerprint scan, a facial scan, or a PIN code or a full password. So we've taken additional measures to ensure the security in the mobile space.
Yeah, that's excellent. Thank you very much, sir.
No problem.
Hey, Dan, it's Chris Clark here. How are you?
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Good. I just thought I'd chime in there. I know you kind of mentioned me earlier. I don't know everybody on the call. I do know some. Eric, who was just on, can I assume correctly your work with Province Nova Scotia?
That is correct, sir. I worked for Transportation Infrastructure Renewal for electrical engineering design. I've been there 10 and a half years. Yeah. Okay,
great. Nice to meet you virtually. Dan and I have been in ready to speak with corporate security through internal services, and you can there's an internal joke between Dan, Mike, and Phil. They're on the line. I know the chief digital officer quite well. Actually, she has an existing office in the cubicle over from me right now, so she and I talk daily about this sort of stuff. So it's certainly top of mind in the province as it relates in internal services, especially that whole concept of the credential, the mobile credential, given you've got, as you can probably experience, multiple people working across multiple offices, having to use multiple access cards. So yeah, it's certainly top of mind in that group.
Well, actually, I have a tender coming out for Mark and for an invitational that we haven't got out because of COVID, and it's actually a security job for the MMA that we're actually looking at, and those guys are one of our invites out of the three, obviously. But yeah, so this is actually prevalent that we actually have a project coming out in the very, very near future. It's actually sitting at procurement ready to go, but we're just waiting for a tender number to get out. So
that's good. Yeah. So and just to speak to what Dan was talking about earlier from a migration perspective. he and I have talked across multiple of my clients about some of that. Some of them, the majority of them are actually still using proximity-based cards, obviously a 20-year-old technology, and they're working on multiple access control systems, whether it happens to be Genetec or Linnell, different products, and really the strategy, there's, hey, everybody pulls everything off the wall, you replace the cards, or as many of them are doing, because, especially now post COVID, when they roll out, is going to be, using a multi-technology reader, maybe potentially putting the readers on the wall, in one fiscal, and then replacing all the card technology and re-enrolling users, reprinting cards, and then doing that next fiscal, and then disabling the technology once you roll forward. And I know Dan and Eric, you both mentioned the biometric as a multi-factor option. I know that's something I was going to ask, but Dan, from a cost perspective, obviously at a high level MSRP-ish, what's the delta between, let's just say a Signo reader as it would be normally, and, something with a biometric read on that?
Yeah, so biometric reader from us comes in a mullion form factor, MRSP on the biometric reader. So that reader will read fingerprint, it will read card, and it will also read smartphone technology with a service pack update. That reader is in about $1,000 to $1,100 US MRSP. So it's extremely cost effective from an equipment standpoint comparatively, and for what you get, to be honest. Just a standard HID Signo multi-technology reader MRSP is in and around the $340, $350 range US. So our reader technology costs in general, I'll speak in general terms, across all reader technologies are starting to come down. The big thing is just, understanding the technology of that manufacturer, right? The security behind the reader in itself. Where are those cryptographic keys stored in the reader? And that's important as well. So, we certainly at HID like to lead the way in that. And the biometrics is going to be something that's going to continue to evolve from us. I do know there's additional biometric reader technology coming out in the future from HID that's kind of a spin-off from the Signal lineup that we've just launched.
Sure. Yeah. And I know, I forget what you guys classified as not reading the fingerprint itself. I know finger vein scanning is obviously the new hot topic to work there. But obviously in those cases, using multi-factor instead of using, card plus keypad, which obviously is very vulnerable to being compromised, and using something like that for, whether it's an IT room or a data closet or data center and that sort of thing. So cool. That was it. I'll leave it open to others there.
So Dan, may I ask you a question? It's Eric, and I was just going to ask you about the wiring. You said that they were going to replace out. Would the wiring be the same for, how is the power for the supply for fourth generation compared to an older generation? How's that work?
On the reader side, Eric, yeah. So it's Weekend or it's terminal strip. It's the same wiring. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Same power supply would it be? It's the same voltage and everything doesn't change in that side of it, does it?
Yeah, it's actually, so the newest generation readers do use a little bit more voltage, but they also have the ability to run intelligent power management. So sustainability, reducing the power consumption on a reader when it's at idle for X period of time, if nobody's had a read on it for, let's just call it a few minutes or whatever it may be, you can drop that utility consumption down to almost 40% upwards of. So, there's different capabilities there. From a wiring in itself, I've taken just a regular pigtail wiring from an R series multi-class reader from 2 years ago and used it to wire my Signal reader to a local board here. So
That's
excellent. It's very similar. Yeah.
That's excellent. The trades will like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions from anybody else in the call? No, Mark?
Okay. All right. Well, Dan, thanks again so much. I really appreciate your time and those that have attended. Thanks to you as well. Thank you for the insight, the questions and your responses, Dan. And we'll be recording and storing the video on our website. If there's some folks that you think, some colleagues that might see some value in it, then we'd be happy for them to have a chance to take a look. We do invite you to check out Dave's session later on this week and look for some more in the future. So thank you so much, everyone, again for your time. We really appreciate it, and we'll have you get back to your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.